All right, so let's go ahead and make this login functional. What we're going to do is we're going to create a login route. So let's go back to our code, close this right here. And inside our app, we are going to create a folder. So because it's going to be a route, we are going to call this login. Okay, it's going to be a login route. Inside login, we are going to create our page.tsx. And here in our page.tsx, we are going to simply copy and paste the example code that we have. So what's happening? We are importing Acme logo because this is an imaginary Acme company that we are working on. And we are also going to import a login form from the UI login form. So let's go ahead and click on login form and take a look at this one right here. As you can see here, there are some hero icons from hero icons, and here it is just a login form. We are utilizing a form. Here we have some class name, div, please log into it. Continue, email. We have our input, ID, type, name, placeholder, all this good stuff. All right, so this is just a login form that's coming from the UI. And here in our export default function, login page is our page here that we are creating. Here we are going to utilize something called NextAuth.js here. So that's what we're going to use because that's going to be our easiest for our application. So let's go back to our code, and to set up the NextAuth.js, we have to install this because it comes as a package. So, and here let's go ahead and install. So npm install, we're going to say next-auth beta, and I'm going to go back to my application. And here in the application, I'm going to go to my env file. And here you can see that auth underscore secret. And I'm going to go ahead and we'll need to update our environment variables in our Vercel project too. So let's go ahead. So what we wanted to do, we are going to go to the settings and we are going to go to environment variables. So the environment variables that we just created, right? So let's go back to our code here. Let's go back to our environment. So as you can see here, auth secret is the one that we want right here. So let's go ahead and copy this. And as you can see here, auth secret development preview production is now added. So what we want to do is we are going to create a config file so that we can work with our next auth. So for this config file, we are going to add it to our root directory. So it's not going to be inside our app. It's going to be on the same level as your env file. So we're going to create a file, and we are going to call this file auth.config.ts. It's a TypeScript file, and it's going to be a config file, right? auth.config.ts. So what we're going to do, we're going to just, first of all, we're going to import the type. And this is going to be NextAuth config from NextAuth. Okay, that's the package. There's the type that give us, and then we are going to do export. We're going to export a const auth config. Okay, I'm going to create this auth config. We're going to say pages. That's the property, one of the property it takes. And here we're just going to say sign in. So sign in is going to go to login route. Okay. So we can use this pages option to specify the route for customer sign in, sign out, and error pages, right? This is not required, but by adding sign in into this login route, into our pages options, the user will be redirected to our custom login page rather than the NextAuth.js default page, right? So this is a nifty little trick. This is optional, but I find it really helpful. So if we do just auth config pages sign in, it's going to, when we log in, after successful login completion, we will be redirected to our login route that we just created in our app login route, which is this page right here. All right. So let's talk about protecting our routes with Next.js middleware. Okay, so we are going to add a logic to protect our routes. So this will prevent users from accessing the dashboard pages unless they are logged in. So right now, in our application, now this is the production application. Let's go back to our dev site. And here, let me see if my server is running. I don't think it is. So let's go ahead and run that. Oops. There you go. Let's go to and refresh. If I click on this login right here, you see that it actually gives me that form because we do have a login route right here. So once we click our email and password and login and whatnot, it should redirect me to this dashboard like so. Okay, so as of right now, I can just click on dashboard or write dashboard to the URL. Nothing's happening. I don't have to log in. So we want to create this protected, right? I shouldn't see this information unless I'm logged in, unless I'm a verified user of this application. So what we want to do here, we're going to go to our auth.config.ts file that we were just on. And here we're going to add another information. We're just going to say callbacks, right? So this is another property, so callbacks. And here we're going to say auth config, we're going to say authorized. It's going to be it's going to be a function. It's going to take auth request, which is going to be a type of next URL. And then here we're going to say const is logged in is equals to variable, and we're going to make sure that auth is a true D value and it has user, right? Auth is definitely has to be. So if there's an auth here, we're going to check optional chaining, and then if that's obviously true, then we are going to get user from that. Another const we're going to create, and we're going to say is on dashboard, and this variable is going to take next URL dot path name dot start, and we're going to use starts with, if this is a new JavaScript that we can use. It's going to be starts with like that, and it's going to be dashboard. It's just going to look for the URL, right? Whether the dashboard is in the URL, right? Okay. Now we're going to check if is on dashboard is true. Then do something, what we want to do. And then if is on dashboard, first it's going to check that, and then it's going to check if logged in, if the user is logged in. If that's true, then we're going to say simply return true, return a boolean. If that's not true, then return false. Now, what is this going to do? This is going to just redirect unauthenticated users to login page so that they can log in. So else, if is logged in, which is we are not on the dashboard, but we are authenticated. Is logged in, right? We are authenticated. We are logged in. All right. There is a user right here. We are just gonna do return response dot redirect. You're gonna redirect, and here we're gonna construct a URL, a new URL with dashboard with next URL like that, and eventually we're just going to return true right here. Okay, and just after our callback here, it's also going to take providers, and these providers are going to be at providers with an empty array for now, because these are going to be the providers that what type of providers you want to use, like NextAuth actually do support OAuth, so you can use GitHub, you can use Google. So after this, we are going to create satisfies NextAuth config. Okay, we're going to save that. So So the authorized callback is used to verify if the request is authorized to access a page via Next.js middleware. It is called before a request is completed, and it receives an object with the auth and request property that we are using right here, right? The auth property contains the user sessions, and the request property contains the incoming request. The providers options right here is an array where you list different login options like I told you before. So for now, it's an empty array that to satisfy the NextAuth config, okay? Now let's import this auth config object into a middleware file in a root of our project. So let me show you how you can create a middleware file in your application that would hit every time there is a routing. It's going to hit the middleware, right? So it is also going to be the same as your env file on the same level. That means it's going to be on the root level, and it's just going to be a file, and we're going to call this middleware.ts, like so. And here we are going to import. This is going to be NextAuth from the NextAuth package. Then we have to import the auth config that we just created, like here in the auth config. All right, so here we are going to export default function, and that's just going to be a NextAuth function with the auth config that we just created, and we're just going to get auth out of there, and we are also going to export const config from here, and this is going to be a matcher. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. This is a matcher, and that's important for Next.js to understand that it's actually going to hit this before every reroute or route, right? So I'm going to go ahead and copy a link here, and that's just going to take you how the middleware actually works for further reading, right? So here we are initializing Next.Auth.js with the auth config object and exporting the auth property. We are also using the matcher option right here from middleware to specify that it should not run on specific paths, right? The advantage of employing middleware for this task is that the protected routes will not even start rendering until the middleware verifies the authentication, enhancing both the security and performance on our application. Okay, so right now let's talk about password hashing. So we are going to utilize your email and password. I'm going to save it to a database, and then the password we are going to save it has to be a hashed version of our password. So let's go to our seed.js script, and we used a package called a bcrypt. As you can see here, const bcrypt equals to require bcrypt. Now bcrypt is a package that would help us hash our password. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new file that's also going to be on our root directory. So it's going to be on the same env file that our root directory. So here we are going to just go ahead and call this one auth.ts. So here we're going to import NextAuth from auth. We are going to import our auth config from our auth.config file, and here we're going to say export const. We're going to export auth, we're going to export sign in, and we're going to export sign out from NextAuth, and that's going to be a function, and there's an object, and we're going to spread the auth config like that. So I'm going to save this. Okay, so next we will need to add the providers option for Next.js. Now providers is an array where we list different login options such as Google or GitHub, like I told you before. Now for this course, we will focus on using the credentials provider only, okay? The credentials provider allows users to log in with a username and password, so simple as this. So what we want to do is here we are in auth.ts, we are going to import something called credentials, and that's going to be from NextAuth provider's credentials, right? So it's going to be NextAuth providers. There you go, credentials. So, and here, and then we're going to pass the providers right here, which is going to be, again, an array with credentials. We are going to, this is a function, and it's going to take an object. So right now, an empty object. Good to know, although we are using the credentials provider, it's generally recommended to use alternative providers such as OAuth or email providers. So you can learn more about from the NextAuth.js docs. Okay, all right, so adding that sign-in functionality. So we can now use the authorize function to handle the authentication logic. Similarly to server actions, we can use Zod to validate the email and password before checking if the user exists in the database. Because we're dealing with form, anytime you're dealing with form, you have to validate those inputs from the users. Here, we are also going to import Zod for validating purpose. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So right underneath the providers, in fact, in here, in the object, we first called it with empty object. Now we're going to add some information. What we want to add, we are going to add an async function. Actually, let's do this. Let's just call this async. And authorize was the function. We are going to give them the credentials as the argument here. And it's going to do const past credentials is equals to Zod dot object, right? And is going to have email. That's going to be a part of a Zod dot string dot email. So it's actually going to check whether this is an email format or not. And then we are going to say password, and that's also going to be z.string. So it's going to be a type of string. Zod string type are also like functions, so you always have to call that one. And we can actually pass like what is the minimum length should be, right? And that's, we can just say that minimum length of a password should be 6. We also want to save parse this with the credentials. Okay, so after validating the credentials, let's create a new getUser function that queries the user from the database. So here we are also going to import SQL from our Vercel Postgres package. We are going to import a type. We're going to import a type, and that's going to be a user. And this type is actually coming from our app, and that's going to be in library, and we are going to do definitions, right? There, we already created the type of user. And then we are going to import the package that we just talked about, bcrypt, so that we can hash our password. Like so. So import bcrypt from bcrypt. So here what we want to do, we want to create a function, and that's going to be an async function. Okay. We're going to call this async function. The name would be getUser. And what this getUser will get, will take. It's going to take an email, which is going to be a type of string, and it's going to return a promise, right, which is going to be a user type or undefined, like that. And here inside there, we're going to just open up a try catch block. And inside the try, we're going to say const user. Let's create the user first. So const user, we are going to await. And this is going to be from our database, right? SQL, which is going to be, it should be type of user. All right, and then a write our, so we're gonna do the template string right here, and then we're gonna write our SQL here. So we're gonna select everybody from users table where email is equal to, now we can actually interpolate the email address that we are going to be passed in as an argument for this function. And it's going to grab that particular user, all this information. Okay, I'm just going to return user rows, and I'm going to return the first row. If anything happens, catch the error. We have the error. We are going to first say console.error, and we're basically going to say failed to fetch user. If something goes wrong, that's what happened. Give me the error, right? Failed to, it failed for some reason. And then we can also throw new error, fail to fetch user. Like so. Right after this save pass, we're going to create we're going to create a check. So what do we want? We want this one. So if pass credentials is success, so it's gonna do that. So I'm gonna say .success, and we're gonna create const email password. We're gonna get that. And don't worry about all this code. These codes examples are actually, you have to write one time. And these examples are already in Next.js documentation, right? So if you want to just create one, just copy paste. This one is just going to work for you same way. So email and password is equals to, we're going to get from that past credentials dot data. And here we're going to create the user. We're going to await the user, and then the function that we just created above here, get user, and we are just going to pass the email that we just grabbed from the pass credential, right? All right, and let's check for if there is no user. Well, we're going to do that. We are just going to return null. Okay, we are also going to return null like so. So now let's call bcrypt.compare to check if the password actually matched. All right, so let's go ahead. But if there is a user, then we're gonna compare. So we're gonna say const password match. So if there's no user, we're returning null. But what if there is a user? Now we have to now compare our password, right? So email matched so far, but does the password match? We're going to do await, and now we're going to call the bcrypt package that we imported, and they give us a compare function. And what does it take? It does take the password user, and it'll compare with the user.password. And I'm going to save. And here we're going to check again if now password match is now true. It's going to only true if that match. We are going to return user, save. Just before we are returning null, we are just going to console log. We're going to say invalid credentials. That means if the code reaches here, which we are returning null instead of a user, something didn't happen, password didn't match. We have to go to action.ts. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to connect the auth logic with our login form. So in our action.ts file, we are going to create a new action called authenticate. Okay, this action should import the sign-in function from auth.ts. Okay, so let's go and actually, I'm going to import later and create a function here for a CRUD operation. I'm going to say auth here, just so you know. And we're going to create an export async function like that. The function name is going to be authenticate. Okay, that's what it's going to do, authenticate. It's going to take some parameters. It's going to take a previous state, and that's going to be either a string or undefined, like that. It's also going to take form data. Okay, the form, the logging form, we are also going to use the server actions. So far we were using server actions that Next.js 14 provides. We can do the same exact thing. It's going to be type of form data. All right, so here we are going to open up a try catch block. The first thing we're going to try is we are going to await the sign in. That's going to come from auth. Make sure that's coming from auth that we created, right? This is the auth.ts. So auth.ts, you see that this is what we are exporting. Auth, sign in, and sign out. That's what we are using here. So go all the way down. So we're gonna say await sign in, and it's gonna take our, I'm just gonna say credentials. I'm going to write the credentials right here, and I'm going to say form data. And if something goes wrong, we are going to catch if error is instance of an auth error. Okay, and that auth error is coming from NextAuth. So this is the type. This is an auth error. If that's an auth error, something happened with the NextAuth authentication, then we're just going to add a switch statement, and we are just going to do error.type. It's going to give us a type, and here instead of type we're going to say case. There's different cases. So one is credential sign in. That's one of the type, error type. If that's the case, we are going to return invalid credentials. Okay, and by default we are going to return, for any other type of error, we're just going to return something went wrong. Save this. And on the same level here, we are going to throw an error. So this is the error that we're going to throw if it's not a NextAuth error, right? Now, finally, in our logging form.tsx component, so let's go ahead and do that. So that's logging form. This is the form that's coming from UI. We can use React's useFormState to call the server action and handle form errors, and use useFormStatus to handle the pending state of the form. That we have been doing this in our previous chapters. So let's go ahead here. I'm just going to go ahead and import. Actually, you know what? It's easier for me to like have the VS Code import for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to here in the login form first. Use the useFormState. So I'm going to say error message and dispatch. Works pretty similar to kind of like use router, like I told you before. So error message and dispatch is coming from useFormState, and that's going to auto import from React DOM. And useFormState is going to take authenticate, and that's going to come from our actions. So authenticate or undefined, right? Cool. If it's authenticate, we just created this authenticate function. That's what we're importing. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add the action here to our form with an action attribute dispatch. So at the very end, where we have our login button just right here. So here, there is a comment at forms error here. So we have our div has a flex h8 items and space x1 tailwind stuff. Let's go ahead and add some aria label. So I'm going to say aria live. And I'm going to say polite. Okay, say aria atomic. And that's going to be true. Okay, and here let's go ahead and open curly brace. We are going to say if error message, if that's the case, we are going to return some JSX here, and that's going to be simply exclamation circle icon, okay, and that's going to come from, if you go all the way up, as you can see here, exclamation circle, our icon is just an icon, hero icon that we're working with. We're going to give some class name to here. We're going to add a height of 5, width of 5, and text red. We're going to do 500. Save that. And right underneath, we're going to return a p tag. Let's give a class name. Here we're going to do text small and text red 500 as well. And we're just going to return the error message, what happened. Now let's go ahead and so here, as you can see, our login button function is right here. So it's just a button. So in this case, we are going to restructure a pending state from our useFormState. We're just going to call the function right here. And what we want to do here in the button, we have our class name. We are going to add aria disabled attribute, and we're going to leave this pending status. And this is actually not going to be useFormState, it's actually going to be useFormStatus. Okay, and they're both going to come from React DOM. Okay, so to add the logout functionality to our side nav, call the signout function from the auth.js in our form element. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go to now our side nav component right here, and we are going to import the signout function. And this signout function is going to come from our auth, like so. And then let's go ahead and call this function. So let's go ahead and call action. And the action is going to be an async function. It's going to be an arrow function. And here we are going to do use server. So you have to do this. Now this is to just show you that you can also do it in a specific form action like that, or you can have like a separate file. And we are going to await our sign out. Call that sign out function. Simple as this. Yes, absolutely, because this is a hook. So every time we want to use a hook, we have to utilize, we have to make a component use client. Save this. Now let's go back here, refresh. There you go. We have our login form. So let's go ahead and try this. I have an email address that I can copy. So simple is user@nextemail.com, and the password is 123456. Let's go ahead and log in. There you go. We are rerouted. It's fine. Change your password. I don't want this. All right. So this is great. This is Now we can also take a look at invoices. We are home page. Now let's see if I do sign out. So if that's the case, I'm going to try something else as well. So I'm going now if I do dashboard, just going to route. If I click on here, you see that it's rerouting because I'm not logged in. So that's our authentication is working. Fantastic.